Welcome back to Sledgehammer Horror, guys. I am Ken Sledge, and today I am very, very excited to announce I have the captain from the True Crime Garage podcast. A lot of you may know him. If you don't, check them out. I have their link in the description. How you doing today, man?
I'm doing great. Good to be here. It's hot.
Yes, very hot. So True Crime Garage. I was recently just turned on to this by my booker, Michael. It is awesome. See, here we talk about horror movies. You talk about the real life horror stories. Can you fill us in a little bit on what that's all about?
Yeah, we started, I think at the end of 2015. So we have 400 plus on our main show, which is True Crime Garage. We do basically 2 parts on a case every week. And then we have a show called Off the Record, which is less true crime, but it's a lot of updates on the cases that we've covered, or a lot of deep dives into maybe one little detail of a case. Take like the John Benet Ramsey case. We might not talk about the whole case, but we might go, oh, remember the Santa bear that was found on the bed? And we'll talk about that for an hour. So
sure.
But we've also done our top favorite, horror movies of all time, and then how some horror movies are connected to real life, which the case that we're talking about today is connected to real life cases. So yeah, and we've just been doing it for a long time. And my partner in the show, Nick, or some people know him as the Crispy Colonel, one day we're in his garage drinking beer, and he goes, "This should be a podcast." Just sitting in the garage drinking beers, and I'm like, "What would we talk about?" And he's like, "True crime." And I'm like, really? That's so depressing. But so now we talk about it every week, and
it's working for you, man. I love it. I was listening to the Las Cruces bowling alley incident earlier today, and
yeah,
it's like hearing these stories, man. Like I said, I love talking about horror movies, man, but that's real shit, and you guys do a great job covering it. You got an avid listener now. Where can people easily download and find the podcast at?
Every single episode is available on the Stitcher app for free. So if you want to start at the beginning and see how bad we were and how it got better over time. But we're on every platform, Apple, Spotify, all those different platforms.
Okay. And again, guys, I will have that in the description so you can check that out. I strongly recommend it, especially if you're a fan of the real life aspect. Like I said, this is all horror movies, but that's real stuff. And it's really intriguing to listen to these guys talk about that stuff. So, but we are here today to talk about your first horror movie. And with this, we got kind of a double feature going on here. But what was the first one that we were going to talk about?
Well, okay, so here's how it all started. So I was at my buddy's house. His name was Harry. I won't give his last name, but his name was Harry. And we're having a sleepover like you'd do for somebody's birthday party. It's kind of a big thing in elementary school. Like, let's get all of our, 10-year-old buddies to spend the night. And when they were there, when we're at his house, he lived in an A-frame in the woods. So it was already kind of scary anyways. And they're watching like Nightmare on Elm Street or something like that. And I didn't think I was allowed to watch those movies. So I went into the other room. Like, I just saw one scene and I was horrified. And I was like, yeah, my parents won't let me watch these. I need to go to the other room. So I went in the other room, and I remember his mother turning on a TV for me so I could watch something else. And
sure.
And then all the kids were coming in. They're trying to figure out, is he scared or is he just not allowed to watch these movies? And so I was like, why? I'm just not allowed to watch these movies. And when I told my parents about it, they're like, of course you're not allowed to watch those movies. So good for you. So now my older brother had some of that stuff, and
sure.
So when I had my sleepover for my party, and everybody was like, oh yeah, these I never watched Texas Chainsaw Massacre, But my brother was watching it with some of his friends, and I walked in right at the beginning, and it said, based on a true story.
Yeah.
Like, that's one of the first things in the original Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And I was like, what? This was real? So when my buddies came over, I never watched the movie, but I was like holding the movie up, like, guess what, guys? Freddy's not real. Freddy's dreams.
Right.
That's stupid, but this is based on a true story. And my father was a detective.
Oh.
So now my friends are like, what? And I was like, yeah, even my dad said it was real.
The ultimate seal of approval, man.
Which was total bullshit. I never asked my dad. But when you pop in that tape and you got, we're like fifth grade, so we're like 10 years old or something like that. And it pops up on the screen based on a true story. We never finished the movie because like these kids couldn't take it.
Oh, that's a hell of a way to start, man.
Yeah. I mean, and I never really watched. I mean, this is how bad growing up in my family was, because my mother was a principal. My father's a detective. I wasn't allowed to watch Pretty Woman.
Because
yeah, I just remember my mom watching it, and look, all she said was, get out of here. It's a grown-up movie. It's not appropriate for you. She only said that because she wanted some time by herself.
Sure.
To watch the movie. She didn't want, her kids going, let's watch the movie with you, Mom. She just wanted some time. I was like 20 some years old at Blockbuster. And one day I rented Pretty Woman because I was like, I got to watch this because I was never allowed to watch it before. And then I watched it. I'm like, this is a romantic comedy. What the hell? What the hell, Mom?
Thanks for ruining my Friday night, Mom.
Yeah, you let me watch Sleepless in Seattle. Which is my favorite. Sleepless in Seattle just got to Netflix. Like they just it's been new to Netflix. So it's trending right now on Netflix. But being a true crime guy, all you see is Tom Hanks with a phone.
Yeah.
And it says Sleepless in Seattle. I'm like, yeah, it's about a stalker. Like if I told you that movie was about a stalker, you'd be like, Sleepless in Seattle. Yeah, it makes sense. So we never finished Texas Chainsaw Massacre because these kids were so frightened that they're like everybody come on. I think because it was, made in the 70s.
Yeah.
That they were like, and this would have been, I'm guessing early 90s. So I'm guessing that they were using their leverage of this movie is old and not scary. So can we please watch something else? But I could tell people were very uncomfortable. The scene where Leatherface opens the door, grabs the person, door shuts, and there's no screaming, and there's no music.
Yeah.
There is nothing that's happening. And at that moment, I think all these 10-year-olds were like, oh my God, we're watching a real movie about killing.
Yeah. And like you said, when you're 10 and you hear based on a true story, you're like, this is scene for scene how this happened in real life.
Yes. We didn't know that they could say, well, because roughly that movie is somewhat loosely based off of like Ed Gein.
Ed Gein, yeah.
And it's like, none of that stuff happened with Ed Gein. It didn't go down that way. He wasn't wearing masks around his house. He didn't have a chainsaw. But when you see, like you said, based on a true story, you're like, oh, this is actually what happened. And there was this crazy family and these murders took place. And now we're just rewatching reenactment. And so we had that movie. And I think I think I asked my brother, like, what should we watch? And I think he thought Texas Chainsaw Massacre was not entertaining enough, or maybe too freaky. So he suggested Stephen King's It. So we halfway through Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and like we're staying up late because it's like it was one of those like we have to watch it when my parents are asleep.
Yep.
Because
in the dark.
Yeah, they won't let us watch it. Oh, we were only in the dark for maybe a minute of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and somebody turned on the light. Like, no, man, I just can't see. That's why we need the light on. And you're like, but why did you pee your pants? He's like, if peeing your pants is cool, then I'm Miles Davis.
Pissing my pants helps me see better. Where have you been?
Yeah, what are you talking about? It doesn't smell.
Yeah. Why haven't you pissed your pants?
You're not cool. Only people that are afraid didn't pee their pants.
Right.
So we
awesome.
We stopped it, and then we started watching part 1 because a lot of people don't get that Stephen King's It was a made-for-TV movie.
Yes.
And it was a part 1 and a part 2.
Mm-hmm.
And I would argue that part 1 is one of the best things that Stephen King's ever done. I wasn't a huge fan of part 2. I think there's something about kids.
Yeah.
And especially like kids that your own age. So no, yeah, we're watching this. So we started watching that, and that's a little more campy, and there's a little more I think tangible, like, oh, it's a clown. So we can just close our eyes and say that he's not real.
And not just that, but the made-for-TV one was a lot more toned down, especially in comparison to Texas Chainsaw.
Right. Yes. Yes. And it was a very weird 24 hours.
Dude, that sounds like an amazing 24 hours going from. If only you would have finished Texas Chainsaw Massacre and then went into it.
Well, what happened was, so we end up finishing part 1, and then we go to bed. Or we probably fell asleep watching it, or some of us did. But the next day, everybody laughed. And so now in my brain, I'm going, okay, well, I have to finish part 2, but I also have to finish Texas Chainsaw Massacre. So I end up finishing part 2 first. And I think that was because it was easier.
Sure.
But then it was like late again. And I'm by myself. And I have to get through this movie that was hard to get through
with friends.
Yeah, and there's that scene where they have the father and his tongue keeps sticking through his little weird mask. And then he has like the hammer where they're
trying to get him
to hit her. Yeah, hit her.
Yeah.
Ugh. Oh, man, it's like that's one of those. I mean, I just remember watching that movie and feeling scarred, like what did I just witness?
Mm-hmm. And it's funny you say that because one of the things I always bring up is that last dinner scene where they're all at the dinner table and the girl is just screaming the whole time. Like that scene traumatized me, man. Like, and they did that scene, I think, in 1 or 2 takes, and she's just screaming that whole time, like true scream queen right there, man. She's just letting them have it. And I agree with you. I think Texas Chainsaw is one of the movies as a kid that really got to me. Like it really, really, because again, as a kid, you see based on a true story and you're like, well, this is frame for frame. This is how it happened, man. This is real shit.
Yeah. And I think the other thing about it too is like, if you just take the setting, because I'm a suburban kid, but back in the 80s or 90s, when you had a suburb, you had cornfields in between your town and the city.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, but nowadays it's like the suburb just kind of eventually leaks into the city.
Mm-hmm.
And so then maybe on the outside of your suburb, you have these roads, but they were all around us. And it was so interesting too, because you take like Stephen King's It and how they ride their bikes, hi-ho silver away.
Yeah.
And it's these kids on these bikes and there's this dam they made. And it was funny because me and my friends had this creek that would go to, and they had the dam, and then would fish, and then we'd catch the fish and put it behind the dam and feed the fish. It was so stupid. and we had these little sewer crates and sewer tunnels, and we had a couple tunnels that we never went through because we're like, we don't know what's on the other side. And
fuck that.
Yeah, we now know that Pennywise lives there, so we're not going to go there. But with Texas Chainsaw Massacre, like especially like where my grandparents lived, like you'd go biking, and then all of a sudden you're on a road with nothing but cornfields and some dilapidated farmhouse that maybe people live in, maybe they don't. But now your only knowledge of that dilapidated farmhouse is this crazy family. Like that scene at the end where she's like running and Leatherface comes out and he still has the chainsaw and he like whipping it around.
Yeah.
You have the truck driver and she's just screaming. It's like, it's so, I think the word would be violent. Mm-hmm. It's like the movie is strangely not violent or gory.
I love the fact that they make you use your imagination in this movie. You know, a lot of the kills, like they show the shadow or they pan off, so you can use your imagination. They don't depend on the blood and gore to keep you in the movie, which is something I've always respected about Texas Chainsaw.
Yeah, I think there's a thing about, and like we were talking about, the first scene where door opens, door shuts, and there's no scream. And you're just like, whoa, what happened? And why did that guy look so messed up? Because he has his mask on. And then you cut to, you know, years later when they came out with the new Texas Chainsaw Massacre. And that starts off really similar to the first one. Oh, there's some crazy guy we pick up on the side of the road, but then he blows his head off, and then they take the camera right through the, you know what I'm talking about?
That was fun. Yeah, that was so cool.
But it's like that movie is almost the opposite. It was so gory. Like there's a scene where he's running, a guy's running, and then Leatherface just cuts the guy's leg off with the chainsaw. And you're like, and I almost didn't like that movie as much.
See, I'm with you. That's one of the remakes. I've talked about this on the channel before. I'm not a huge fan of. One of the only things I like about the remake is the camera shot that goes through the guy's head. I love that shot. But
yeah, I think there's some creative stuff there. Mm-hmm. But I also think the problem with scary movies is it's hard to have well, that's Jessica Biel, right?
Yeah.
It's hard to have a Jessica Biel because some of the horror, it's kind of the reason why Stephen King, Part 1 is better than Part 2. Because once they get to Part 2, there's at least a couple actors you know or have seen on TV before.
Right.
The kids you never saw before.
Right.
So it becomes more, like you said, based on a true story. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so I think, and again, I think that's also why Halloween was so great originally with like Jamie Lee Curtis, right?
Yeah.
And then when you see her now, it's like, yeah, but Jamie Lee Curtis has now became an actor.
Right.
So it's just like, yeah, we know this is pretend, you know. I think there's an element of, you know, a lot of these characters are based off of real people.
Well, sure.
You know, so it's like, I think if you blur that line a little bit, that's what creates the horror more, you know.
Well, it definitely creates that tension because, like you said, if you put the guy that played Napoleon Dynamite in a horror movie, it's very hard for me to take that seriously.
Right. Yeah, and it's weird though too because I compose all the music for our show, and so I'm really into composition. And I was watching the newest Sinister, whatever. It was awful. It was one of the worst things I've ever seen in my life. Sinister, is that what it's called?
They have Sinister. Is it the one with the kids where they're watching the films and then?
Yeah, the first Sinister was with famous actor, was in Training Days.
Yeah, Ethan Hawke.
Ethan Hawke, and that again because it's Ethan Hawke, you're like, yeah, can only. But the idea of it was kind of interesting. This writer, he's going to move into the house and write about these murders that took place in the house, and you're like, oh, well, that's kind of like Amityville Horror or something. So, okay, I can see that. But the second Sinister was so bad. But the music for Sinister is amazing. But I also think that's another thing. Yes, those sound, you know, look, Freddy, Jason, I mean, Jason is probably the best with the.
Oh yeah.
But there's something about that original Texas Chainsaw Massacre where there's just space and not music.
Right. The absence of, which makes it even more the tension.
Yeah, it's this weird tension, but that's also like if you ever rode your bike a mile away from your house and you're on this empty road, I mean, you're hearing shit. You know,
oh, dude, I grew up in a town called Sand Creek, and same thing, cornfields everywhere. We had a little ghost trestle, is what they call it. Ghost trestle is like a little train tracks went over a bridge. We'd go down there and hang out. So I definitely know what you're talking about. So I keep getting distracted by Ryan Gosling's piercing daggers at me, man.
I'm sorry. And I don't know if he's ever been in a horror movie. Well, I mean, he was in one, but have you ever seen The Notebook?
Oh.
It's about this guy that loves his wife, but at the end, she has Alzheimer's so bad that he rapes and murders her. That's what it's about. It's called The Notebook. It's very similar to like Suburbia, or what was that movie called? Is that right? Suburbia?
Suspiria?
No. I'm talking about the one with Shia LaBeouf. Yeah, it's based on the Alfred Hitchcock movie.
Suburbia?
Yeah, I think it's called Suburbia. Is that right? It's the one where his neighbor he thinks is killing people.
Never seen it.
Oh, I mean, I think
the only one I can think of, like, I just watched this movie recently called Summer of '84, which is kind of the same premise. It's kind of like Stranger Things would meet that movie. Like, it's a bunch of kids and they think their neighbor's out killing people. It's actually it's on Shudder right now, or Amazon Prime, one of the two. It was a very, very I was actually impressed. It was a pretty good movie.
Yeah, no, I mean, this Shia LaBeouf movie was so great because, one, there was something about the 80s movies. I know we're getting way off track, but
no, that's fine.
But there was something about 80s movies where like the characters had cool ass rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you ever watched the movie Little Monsters.
Oh, of course.
And
Howie
like
Mandel, Fred Savage.
Yeah, Fred Savage, like his room is the attic and it's like huge and you could like play basketball in it and you're like, wow. But it's so in Suburbia with Shia LaBeouf, like the whole movie is just like this. Like,
I lost you there, brother. You froze up.
You froze. Yeah, you're frozen. It says we're recording. Oh,
there it is.
But it starts off like the kid just got in trouble and he now has to stay in his house. He's house arrest.
Okay.
And then he thinks that his neighbor is killing people, so he's trying to convince people. And it's based on Alfred Hitchcock, but that movie is so great because it never feels like a thriller or a horror movie till the end.
Okay.
So it takes an hour to get there.
I love that. Well, you're building the whole time, and it's like a clock winding, getting ready, and it's coming.
Yeah, that's a good one. I don't know where I was going with that, but.
Well, I'm gonna have to check it out now. Suburbia.
I believe that's what it's called.
I'm gonna look into it.
Big Shia LaBeouf fan. I just think he's been in a lot that's been, I don't know. I think there's a authenticity to what he does, which, if you ever see Lawless.
Oh yeah.
It's like, he's amazing.
Yeah, see, I don't have a problem with him. I've never watched much with him in it, I guess. Because when I think of Shia LaBeouf, I think of like Holes,
Right. Yeah,
which
see, I never saw Holes.
Yeah, I'm not shitting on the movie. I actually enjoy it to this day, but like I seen him in that Indiana Jones movie, which I wasn't a huge fan of, the Crystal Skull or whatever. But I loved Harrison Ford and I love Shia LaBeouf. I just wasn't a huge fan of the movie.
Here's the problem with Crystal Skulls, right? Is the premise is just way too cool. Like, there are crystal skulls. Like, that's a real thing. Like, who made them? I don't know. How they were made? I don't know. but it's a real thing. And then they're like, hey, we're going to make a movie about it. And you're like, this is going to be awesome. And then it sucked.
Yeah.
And there's very seldom, like if I gave you an idea, like, hey, we're going to look for these crystal skulls. There's like some missing ones and they're going to find some. You'd be like, that sounds amazing.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of the times when they have a amazing premise, it turns out to be a shit movie.
Execution, man. All about execution.
That's right.
Because I was just talking about that with a buddy of mine. Your good ideas are only as good as the execution on them.
Yeah, because if I said, hey, look, there's a clown that comes back every 20 years or every 50 years or whatever, and he kills kids, and parents can't see him, you'd be like, that doesn't even sound like a good premise, you know? But
execution.
But can you pull it off, you know?
Yeah. And I agree with you. A lot of the kids in that movie are phenomenal.
Wait, now are you talking about are you talking about the first one?
Yeah.
Or the new one?
I like them both, but in the first one, the one that we were talking about before,
the made-for-TV movie.
Yeah.
Yes.
You know, like having Seth Green in there as a kid, and the main character, the kid from he was also in Neverending Story, I believe.
Yeah, he was in a few things around that time, yeah.
Yeah.
But also part one of the new It, I thought the kids were great.
Yeah. But see, nobody liked It Chapter 2, but I didn't mind It Chapter 2. There's a lot in It Chapter 2 I really like. I like Bill Hader a lot. I think
Bill Hader was great. Yes.
Yeah, I think every scene he was in, he absolutely killed it.
Some of the CGI was garbage, though.
Oh, and I'm a huge practical effects guy, so I completely agree with that.
But hold on. What was nice was the original, it turned into a giant spider. And it was like, okay, where did Pennywise go? But this one, it was like Pennywise as a spider.
Yeah.
So there's definitely parts where I'm like, I like the part 2 of the new one way better than the old one.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It'd be hard. It would be hard for me to compare the first one. This is so hard to talk about. The made-for-TV movie part 1 and the movie part 1. Those to me are like equal levels.
Sure.
Great. Awesome. Made for TV movie part the made for TV movie part 2.
Part 2. Yeah.
Is very subpar compared to part 2, the new one.
See, and the part 2 in the new one of my favorite scenes is the Paul Bunyan scene. I absolutely love that scene. It doesn't look the greatest, but I love how they executed that scene.
Yes.
That was one of my favorite things in the book, was because that, you know, I don't know if you're, where are you at? Where are you from?
Columbus, Ohio.
See, hey, go Buckeyes. I'm in Michigan.
Oh,
and
no.
Yeah, I know. It sucks. I am a Buckeye fan. But you know, Paul Bunyan around here, that's something, you know, here Midwest, it's all, you know, we all know Paul Bunyan in blue, you know, like the ox. So
Right.
when I was a kid, the Paul Bunyan scene in the book always scared the shit out of me, because we'd go to Wampler's Lake and they had a Paul Bunyan statue there.
Yeah.
You know, so that's one thing that I always loved, that scene in the book. So I was really excited to watch that on film. Well, let me ask you this. When it comes to it, which Pennywise do you think you prefer more, old or new?
I think that's a really hard question, because we both have aged since we saw the original.
Mm-hmm.
And so as far as like scary, I know I know my 10-year-old self, if I watch the new one as a 10-year-old,
yeah,
I'm going to be way more scared of the new one.
Sure.
Because I also think, I mean, heck, just if you take we do have some kind of a comparison, if you want to talk about. Both of them, both part 1s, have the same scene of Georgie going after the boat.
Yeah.
The new version shows him getting his arm ripped off.
And the old one just has
his mouth open, and that's it. Now, come on. The 10-year-old me is pissing my pants on the new one.
Sure.
So I think I don't know. I mean, it's a tough one because I actually think they're both perfect and they're both different.
Right. See, here's my opinion. I prefer the Tim Curry one from the Made for TV movie, and the reason why, what you just said, the new one is scarier. And I feel like if the clown was trying to lure kids in, he wouldn't be coming at them scary. He would be more of a fun, happy clown like the Tim Curry one to kind of get the kids to let their guard down.
Right, right.
So that's why I mean, Bill Skarsgård was amazing. The stuff he did with his face, his eyes, like that, none of that was CGI. He did that himself. Like he could fuck with his own eyes. And
Yeah,
I think Bill Skarsgård was perfect, but they made him, if I'm a kid and I seen Bill Skarsgård's Pennywise, fuck that. I'm out. You know, I'm gone.
Yeah.
I'm running. But if
Yeah,
you
no
see,
more.
Yeah, you see Tim Curry's Pennywise, you're like, hey, he'll give me a balloon. And
Yeah.
I heard it floats.
Well, but I don't know because there's that scene underneath the bleachers when he's like, nobody likes me either. And he starts talking like a baby. And I'm like, oh, that's so creepy. But I could see how a kid would be like, oh, don't cry, clown. I'll help.
Right,
you.
especially her with the scar on her face, you know, and then he just, bam. That was a scene that got me in the theater. Like, oh, shit. He bit that girl's face off.
Oh, yeah, but I think they're both perfect for what they were.
Sure.
You know
Oh,
what I mean?
absolutely. It's one of those ones where if the made-for-TV movie's on, I can watch it. And if the other one's on, the new one, I can watch it. Like, I don't have that, oh, the old one's better because it was the original. Like, I don't have that feeling, and I don't have the new one's better because it wasn't made for TV. I very much enjoy both of them.
Yeah, and I think and that's very rare because one of my favorite movies is Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Okay.
And then if you compare Gene Wilde to Johnny Depp, there's no comparison. Johnny Depp's is awful.
Yeah.
You know, I think he was awful. And
I never finished Charlie and the Chocolate Factory because, and that's funny you say that because Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, man, that tunnel scene scared the shit out of me when I was a kid. When he was singing in the tunnel, like that scared the shit out of me, man.
Yeah, there was something that Gene did where you liked him, but you knew he was off a little bit.
Yep.
And it was so perfectly played. And
Gene Wilder absolutely crushed that role. Like you said, that role was written and made for Gene Wilder. He was amazing.
Do you know the story about the scene he wrote that he said, I have to do this scene or I can't be Willy Wonka?
No.
So the opening scene when he comes out with a cane.
Yeah.
He actually wrote that scene. And so the idea was that the cane would get stuck and he would go to walk and then he'd do a cartwheel.
Sure.
And so the first glimpse that you get of Willy Wonka is was he faking or not faking? You know what I mean? Like, what's going on here? So he just knew that if you set up the first scene, the first time you see him, he's playing a trick on you. That for the
he's
rest
unhinged right from the rip.
Yeah. From the rest of the time, you'll be going, what am I supposed to expect from this guy? And when he starts saying good day, sir, the end scene where he goes on the rant and his hair is just flopping everywhere. I mean, it's one of the best. And then I got so excited. Old Johnny Depp and Tim Burton are going to do Charlie and the Chocolate Factory. It's going to be a little different. It was so bad. It was like, no, this is not even close to the same thing, you know.
Couldn't even finish it, man. And it's funny. I think Johnny Depp is a great actor. I think he's phenomenal, but there's just not much he does that I like, which is weird. Cause like I said,
so
I think
maybe he's not that good. Maybe he's not that good.
I don't think it's his fault. I think it's the movies that he's in. I'm just not a fan of, you know?
Yeah. I mean, because I think like What's Eating Gilbert Grape is, I mean, that's like a 10 out of 10 movie every day of the week, I think. And he was great in that, but there's so much other stuff. He's a turd, you know.
Lost you again, brother.
Are you, am I here? Or can you hear me? Up. Now I lost you.
Yep. There you are.
There you go. No, I was just saying he's a turd in a lot of his movies. It's like he has a lot. I mean, Benny and June is a very underrated movie.
Okay.
Do you know that movie where
I don't.
he's like autistic and she's a little autistic, and his whole thing is that he's obsessed with he was a silent film actor that he was obsessed with.
Okay.
So he had all these like little, you got to watch it, but it's like the amount of tricks and talents that Johnny Depp had to learn to play that character is just unbelievable. It's a silly rom-com, but it really shows
worth the watch.
Just because of his talent level. I mean,
right.
But then you just see him in other stuff and you're like, ugh.
See, and it's funny. My favorite Johnny Depp movie is a movie that everybody else I talk to hates, and it's Secret Window. I loved that movie.
Never saw it.
I was a big fan. It's kind of crazy. It's kind of quirky, but I was a big fan, man.
That's about an author being in a cabin, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep. And he kind of goes.
That's a good, easy premise.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
and when you watch, him slowly going off the rails as the movie progresses, I won't spoil anything, but man, it's a fun movie. If you get the chance to check it out, I would recommend it. I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Well, let me ask you this about it before I get you off here. If you had to choose one scene from it that stuck with you the most, because I figured you finished part 1, so we'll bring that up. What do you think is the one scene that stuck with you the most in the made-for-TV It?
When I was a kid?
Yeah.
Well, I really think I really think I couldn't get out the scene of Leatherface opening up the door and taking the guy and slamming the door. Because, like I said, I watched half of Texas Chainsaw Massacre, watched part 1, and then decided to watch part 2. And all of part 2, all I could think about was Leatherface. Like, opening up the door. And I think I was really confused as a 10-year-old of why didn't we hear a scream? Like, I don't know if there was one scene in, again, because it's all within 24 hours.
Sure.
So there was no scene of a movie that's a little more playful that was going to overshadow what I already saw. You know what I mean?
Right. Oh, no. Like I said, both horror movies, but both on complete opposite ends
of the spectrum
almost.
Yeah. And I just remember, finishing 2, and like I said, I was fast forwarding it through Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
You cut out again, brother.
I'm here. Oh, I'm here.
I got you. There you are. Got you back.
So I'm sorry. I don't know why I keep cutting out. My internet says I'm fine.
Yeah,
it's Zoom.
It is.
There's 10 people on here doing podcasting. No, I think, like I said, I think there was that window, the 24-hour window, that I still remember, like, looking at the TV during the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre with, the scene where they got the hammer and they're trying to get.
Yeah.
I remember, like, there was nobody else in the room with me at that point, and I was, like, looking around for help. Like, is anybody else watching this? This is insane.
And that's such a dark scene, man, because the guy's he's almost dead at this point. Like, he can't even lift the hammer. And they're still telling you, nobody does it like Grandpa. Grandpa could do it better than anybody.
And there hasn't really, and you probably know better than me, I don't know if there's been a movie like that since.
No.
That is just like, and okay, so to cut the middle, right? In Cleveland, there was that guy that was keeping those girls in the basement.
Yeah.
And there's actually guys that have taken just like in Silence of the Lambs. What a lot of people don't understand about Wild Bill, right? They call him Wild Bill. Buffalo Bill. Yeah, Wild Bill, sorry. Buffalo Bill is he has like a sub-level underneath the basement.
Mm-hmm.
And there's people that have actually created these. And it's sad, but there's probably people in cages under people's houses right now as we speak that have been alive for several years. And we covered this case where this guy actually had land, nothing on the land but a little barn. And he would keep these women in cages. And like, so if somebody said to me, oh, we're going to give you $1 million and you got to make a movie that's really going to disturb people, I would take the same approach as Texas Chainsaw Massacre, base it on a true story, make it gritty, don't put a bunch of music to it. And just, you know, I don't know. And I think the part of that movie too, which was good, was there's sometimes a scene where you don't really fully understand what's going on.
Sure.
You know, they might have to back up a little bit and then you're like, oh, that's going on. What the, you know? So I think, you know, but it's weird that there's a strange weirdness where like, true crime and horror, like, are always kind of married.
Oh,
you know?
Influenced by each other. You can't tell me a lot of true crimes aren't influenced by horror and vice versa. Horror that, like you were just talking about, if you were going to make a horror movie, you would base it off something that you've talked about. Like we were talking about those girls from Cleveland, the people that don't know that story, those girls were there for over a decade, I believe.
Yeah, the one had a child by him.
Yeah, like they were held there for a long time, a heartbreak. I mean, a day is too long.
Right.
This was a heartbreakingly long time for these girls that were held captive and prisoner in this guy's basement. And this guy would go out and fraternize with his neighbors, and he was known as a really good guy. And he's hiding these girls in his basement the whole time. Like, you hear the story, and, you know, these girls, half their lives have been stuck in a basement.
Yeah. And
what's scarier than that?
Yeah, it's like when you watch Silence of the Lambs and you see him like feeding down a bucket. It's like, okay. And then to know that really exists. And it's also one of the weirdest cases because it's one of the funniest YouTube videos.
Oh,
the guy that found him.
Yeah.
We ate
ribs with this dude.
Yeah. Not a bad guy. And then I saw he calls her like a crazy white bitch. Like, then I saw a crazy white bitch screaming. And I'm like, I don't know why she's crazy.
Said, I knew there was something. I knew something was wrong when a crazy little white girl ran into a black man's arms. That was a dead giveaway. You know, and we can make light of it, but yeah, I can't imagine that happening with one of my neighbors. You know, some girl running out screaming, "Help! Help! He's keeping me prisoner."
But she didn't even run out because what happened was he was on his porch eating his McDonald's, and he saw a hand through the. You know, she got the door open, but couldn't get a latch off, so she has her hand. You know, going, somebody help me, you know, and that's not funny at all. And so, but could you imagine sitting on your porch and then you just see this hand going, help me. You'd be like, what the hell is going on?
Yeah.
You know,
and as a parent, you know, I have 2 daughters and a son, and the amount of time they were gone, I can't imagine, you know, those parents, there's no way. I hate to be so dark, but I would never believe my daughters were still alive if they were gone for over a decade. You know, that's got to be the worst feeling you have in your body, you know, every day wondering what have they gone through.
And it's weird that you say that because a lot of the cases that we've covered, a lot of people don't know this about our show because we don't talk about it a lot, but some of these cases that we find really interesting, there's not enough information, so we try to contact the family and we tell them, hey, we're trying to bring light to this case, but there's not enough information. Can you help us? And it's really strange when you sit down to dinner with one of them and then they're saying, I feel my daughter's alive. That's what I feel.
Right.
And I've also met with parents that they're like, after 3 days or after a week, I felt my son was dead. And some of them have been right on the day. Like we know that the kid was killed 3 days after being captive, And both parents woke up and had a feeling our kid's dead now. And
That's got to be the worst feeling in the whole. All horror movie and stuff aside,
yeah,
I would never wish that on anybody, man. Like, as a parent myself, that's something that I could not even fathom, you know. So anybody that's ever gone through anything like that, my hopes, prayers, love, and positive vibes out to everybody.
Yeah, I mean, any missing person case, I think, because you might know about the Amy Mihalovic case. It was a girl in Cleveland. Somebody called her house, right? Somebody called her house and said, your mother got a promotion and I want to meet you at this local store. And we're going to buy a present for your mom. I work with her, but we're going to buy a present because your mom got a promotion. So the girl shows up after school the next day, and she wasn't seen from, and they end up finding her body in a field some time later. Where was I going with this? I was going somewhere with this, and I lost my train of. It's been a long day.
Oh, I get it.
Where did I start off so I can finish?
Missing person cases.
Oh, but like, I don't know if you edit at all, but if you don't, sorry. But no, it's like, but you know, that destroyed their marriage. It really kind of destroyed her mother.
Yeah.
And I couldn't even imagine, how you move on from that. And
I don't think you can.
I
think it's something you kind of learn to live with. I hate to say it cold like that, but I think eventually it's just. I remember. There.
I remember what I was going to say because, so like I said, the mom went basically crazy with, which rightfully so. I'm not saying that she's like a weirdo or anything. I'm just saying,
right.
She even got to the point where even some of the stuff that she was talking about, I think in the case was kind of. Because there were some suspects that actually like the parents met, and then they also, there's this constant thought of, okay, well, if this guy knew our number, how did he get our number? If he said he knew me, did he know me?
Right.
So she kind of goes off the rails, but what the father said, which it's so fascinating that when you study one case, how much it links to other cases. And he said there's no closure. We find her body. They've never found her killer, but even if they find her killer, there's no closure.
What does that do?
Yeah, if that makes any sense.
No, I get it.
Where
That's not going to bring my daughter back.
Right, where I think a lot of people are like, the family needs answers. The family needs closure. So I'm on the side, yes, the family needs answers, but the closure part, I don't know if that ever happens, And all I can base that off of is a man that lost his daughter that is telling me there ain't closure, buddy.
Right.
But it's weird though too, because I wonder if it's worse that they know that they're dead, or if it's worse that there's not even an answer at all.
See, that's the thing for me, because if you don't have the answer, I think I hate to say it, but I think that would be worse for me. Because if I know they're dead, I know they're not suffering, I know they're not in pain, but if I don't know, what if they are still chained up in some basement somewhere being tortured every day?
Yeah, it drives me crazy too, because there's some individuals that we with technology and everything, we know that their window is 3 minutes long.
Yeah.
And they went missing, and it's almost like they poof into thin air. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And those cases are the ones that like baffle my brain,
mystified.
Yeah, because you're just going, okay, I know they talked to somebody here, and then it's like there's this gap. But once you shrink that gap down to like 7 minutes, and then you're like, okay, well, within that 7 minutes, something happened and they were never seen again.
Right.
And it's like, what happened? Like those are mind blowing.
Yeah. Well, if you guys want more stories like this, make sure you're checking out the podcast, because I'm telling you, you're going to hear stories just like this, and it's so worth it. It's so much fun to listen to. Warning, sometimes it is very unsettling, very upsetting, but it's real life, man. Like this, life is not always sunshine and rainbows. It's not always a happy ending. So it's worth a listen. It's a lot of fun. It's very entertaining. Captain, I want to thank you for being on. I want to end it with this real quick. Texas Chainsaw, let's do that one. I usually end these on a skull rating. If you're going to rate that on a scale of 0 to 5 skulls, 0 being the worst, 5 being the best, what are we giving Texas Chainsaw?
I think at 5. You know, it's why not? I mean, it was the first
Can't
one.
argue.
You know, it's the first one, and it was so gritty and almost too realistic.
Yeah. And like I said, I love you have to use your imagination in that movie. You have to. They don't show you a lot of the blood and gore, and what they do show you is so unsettling. You want to go back to your imagination. So I'm with you on the 5 there, man.
Yeah. And I also think that there should be a category like, and maybe there's a bunch of sub genres for horror, because like I hate the jumpy movies that make you jump. I don't even know what they're called, but there should be a category so that I know, oh, that's a jumpy one. I'm not interested.
Yeah.
I want
the story to scare me, not the loud noises.
Yeah, I want the stuff that I run into a weird guy at the gas station and I'm starting to think, oh, this guy can do stuff. But also I think what they do show, especially the scene at the table at the end, it's torture.
Yeah.
You are watching torture. So I think it's I think if you could watch that movie and like eat a meal with it, you should just go lock yourself up.
Yeah, please don't vote.
Don't vote and lock yourself. And you know that room that you built underneath your basement to put people in, just lock yourself up in that room.
Oh, that's great, man. Dude, and again, dude, it really means a lot that you came on. I had a really good time.
I'm sorry I couldn't figure out Ryan Gosling. I wish I could have figured him out, but
there's a lot of women out there that could wish they could figure him out too. So
yes.
I am going to be doing some more segments here in the future. Hopefully I can have you guys back on. One of them will be Coffee and Killers, where we just sit around, drink some coffee, and dissect our favorite slasher films. I'd love to have you back for that, man. I'll send you your own mug so we can talk about some killers and drink some coffee. And again, guys, go to the description, check out the True Crime Garage. I promise you, you won't regret it. It's so entertaining. Like I said, viewer discretion advised. It can be graphic. It can, but it's real. So this is stuff that it's to me just as intriguing as horror movies, because with the horror movies, at least we know they're all okay. This, you really gotta soak it in. It's something I listen to all the time at work now, and it can be heartbreaking, but it's real. You guys do a great job. You have me hooked. It means a lot you came on the show. My booker, Michael, also the one that got a hold of you, he is a huge, huge fan. So, he wanted me to let you guys know.
Damn, Michael.
Huh?
It's all Michael's fault.
Oh, yeah.
If you liked the episode or you hated the episode, it's Michael's fault.
Yep, not me or you. I think we did perfect.
We did our jobs. What Michael did, is for the audience to judge.
Yep. I'll put his link down there too, so you can either bitch at him or congratulate him.
Yeah. Or both. Just to confuse him. I really love
thank you for talking horror with me, man. That's one of my things. Let's talk horror. So I appreciate you doing that with me. For everybody out there, thank you so much for tuning in, and we'll be seeing you guys soon.